despite the fact that they keep cutting off the tops of mountains so that they could frack in the same area that they took all the chromium out to build the steel industry, okay? We could say all that, but the people who know better are trying to tell Donald Trump, you can't do it like that. And when he hires people, and let's face it, he did, like Betsy DeVos, and puts them in charge, and Congress kind of said no, you know? The split vote on that was Mike Pence. And we saw what Mike Pence did with education in Indiana. So this doesn't surprise me a whole lot. If you're not putting the right people in charge, again, this is a matter of not being in a business, but being in a government where that invisible infrastructure that you're talking about and that you're referencing is the benefit that you and I get, that we pay into with our tax dollars. There's nobody going out, I'm sorry, there's nobody going out with a couple $1 billion and saying, here, build your wall along the Mexican border. And in case you're curious, the reason that the AHCA did not pass or never even got taken to the floor was not because it was poorly written, which it was, not because it didn't do what we needed it to do, which it did, but because it wasn't hurting enough people. The Koch brothers literally came out and said, I am going to root against you if you vote for this bill. I'm going to pay people to run against you. Believe me, they're powerful. Because you don't cut enough health care. So the point is that when you're talking about simple math of let's pay money into this to buy that, let's build this building for this amount of money, it's very different from saying the government is going to provide this infrastructure for this activity. And when I say activity, I mean things like, I don't know, small tiny things like just primary and secondary education, right? So it's that unseen thing, and you're right. There's a lot of reasons to love Donald Trump for that rhetoric, and the fact that it's not matching up to the policy is not anyone's fault. It's not anyone who voted for Trump's fault, right? That it's Donald Trump's fault, and that's okay, because in less than what, 18 months you get to vote for new Congress people, and in less than 4 years you get to vote for a president again. And if you think that Donald Trump has kept his promises, you'll vote for Donald Trump. And if he doesn't keep his promises, you won't. And that's why we have a 4-year cycle and not a king or a monarchy. That's exactly why.
You know, speaking of Congress, Dan, you had mentioned Congress in your response. Since 2010, Congress has been historically inept at passing legislation, to the point where now Republicans are in complete control of Congress. I shouldn't say complete control, but they're, for the most part, yeah. They have majorities, at least in both chambers, and still they can't get things done. Dan, I'm giving you 2 minutes. Fix Congress in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Or more or less.
Fix Congress.
Fix Congress. Get us to pass laws again. Why can't we pass laws? Fix it, Dan.
All right.
Fix it.
I'm not going to say term limits because honestly, I think that opens up more problems than it actually solves. One, I would say get us away from single member districts. Okay, let's start talking a little something more towards the parliamentary system. Get us away from single member districts and first past the post voting. I guess
winner take all.
Winner take all.
First past the post, sure.
Yeah. I think those are 2 things. Also, I would say this is going to sound counterintuitive. Bring back earmarks. Allow the leadership in the parties to have control over money again, so that they can provide a carrot and a stick. Because right now, outside interests are really good at providing a carrot to legislators. Instead, it used to be the party bosses, the elected and I shouldn't say party bosses, I should say the elected leadership of the House and Senate of each party having control, saying, okay, if you don't vote for this, your town is not going to get X, Y, or Z. We got rid of earmarks because it was good governance. That also meant that the parties lost power, the party politicians lost power, and outside influences, people who want to write checks to politicians, gained that power.
Would you say also overturning
Citizens United?
I don't know if that's actually necessary at this point. I would say I think if we could provide the party or provide like Chuck Schumer and those people, if they have meaningful control over what happens. Because right now in the Senate, you have 100 basically independent players that have no need for a party. And so, and that's largely from the banning of earmarks, because everyone is a free agent. And we need people to have, we basically need some control.
I'm afraid that's 3 minutes.
I interrupted.
No, it's okay. All right, anybody, again, we can continue the conversation up here. We want to get you guys involved. Any questions about anything we're discussing? Anything you'd like to hear about in general? Had some really good ones so far. Any questions? All right, that's fine.
What do you think about Donald Trump's foreign policy so far?
That's an excellent question.
If you can hear in the back, sorry.
Yeah, we had a great question from Sam asking, what do we think about Donald Trump's foreign policy so far?
Honestly, it's been fairly standard. I mean, for the most part, beyond the rhetoric, but and whether NATO's important or things like that, but the choice to enforce or bomb, that's a fairly normal kind of reaction from us. If you look at it historically back to the Bush, Reagan, Bush, any of those presidencies, Clinton, that was a fairly standard. I think that beyond his rhetoric that we had early on of China's going to be a currency manipulator, oh wait, no they're not, because China's important to us this week. It isn't looking all that different. Some people will be surprised by that, but it does look very similar to what we've seen in the past few. And I think that's because of the people that he has put around him, specifically General Mattis and things like that, because they're fairly standard operators.
I'll say Mattis is keeping him under control. I think that a couple of things are problematic foreign policy-wise. I think, number one, the tweets probably don't matter, but the rhetoric will matter eventually in the negotiation breakdown later on. I'm not disagreeing that right this second it doesn't necessarily look pretty similar, but I'm going to say that down the road it could look very bad if we continue along this. I think that the only reason that we're not engaged in global thermonuclear war at this point is because Kim Jong-un got talked out of it. I mean, we can piss off some pretty scary leaders right now, and we want to make sure that we don't do that. The only thing I think that is more radical than Kim Jong-un right now is our president, and that's really problematic. I think that we've dealt with Europe very poorly. We have not been good advisors to our British or our French friends and allies. I think that the conversation with the UN has been problematic. Pulling out a TPP, I don't even understand economics, so I'll leave that one alone. I have no idea. But I do think that the rhetoric that we're using, and when I say rhetoric, just so we're all clear, I don't mean flowery, empty language, because to me, rhetoric has a lot of meaning. It's the way that our politics are defined, right? I mean, Shirley Dan taught you that, too. That I would assume you did, since you wrote your paper on that.
I know.
Your thesis was on it. I do think that the rhetoric is going to become important if it isn't important now. So I give the foreign policy right now a steady C.
It's Trump supporter, so I'm wondering what they're thinking, folks who voted for him, because he really, again, the rhetoric was this kind of isolationism that people are tired of fighting these wars. Why are we always sticking our nose in places where it doesn't belong? And we're not going to do that anymore. And again, I think a lot of us feel that's kind of silly that you can't just back out of the world. But again, I'm just wondering how Trump supported.
Yeah, you're right
about that. Sort of that shift.
There is also one big change, because I agree, it's been pretty consistent within the first 100 days from Obama to Trump. Obviously, we got 4 years left. But I do want to put my finger on one thing that Dr. Dudash talked about, which is a huge departure, which was Trump ripping up the TPP. Now, the TPP was an economic trade agreement that the United States signed with almost every single Pacific country. Almost every single Pacific country, excluding the biggest one, China. Now, the reason we did that was to engage, sure, in some favorable trade arrangements and hopefully make some more money. Really, it was an economic pivot away from the old world of Europe to an emerging market of the Pacific countries. And it was done in part to negate the growing diplomatic power of China. And that's incredibly important to do because China is, they're not a capitalist country, they're a communist country. In addition to that, they're also an autocracy, they're not a democracy. They pick, the leadership picks their own leaders, and then that leader, when he gets done, picks another leader, and so on. So if you care about democratic expansion, which is usually accompanied by expansion of human rights and civil rights, you really got to care about the spread of democracy. When the Obama administration was successful in striking up the TPP, that was a blow to China's economic and diplomatic power in the Pacific, saying we are going to do everything we can to negate the political power you have of your neighbors, to keep your influence in check. It's not even clear that if Obama's TPP had gone up for a vote in Congress, well, it is pretty clear. If it had gone up, it would have been shut down. But Trump has ripped it up. Now, that's a joint statement of Trump and Congress saying that we are not interested in expand for lots of various trade reasons. We don't want to make it easier to outsource jobs to the Pacific. Some of these countries you're making deals with have really crappy labor laws. All that is justified. But the downside of that, of course, is that China, as it is now, more and more countries under this administration currently are not looking to the United States for global leadership. They are looking more and more to China, particularly as the United States sits on its hands to deal with climate change, and China has taken the global lead role.
Initiative, and that's the problem there. And the other thing you should know is that prior to the TPP, the way we kept China in check was with, and I'm not kidding you, you can look this up, gigantic islands, man-made islands that we floated over into and surrounding China.
Awesome.
I'm not even joking.
That's
These are
so cool.
real. This is dead serious real. And these military bases that we floated over there, and by the way, it would take a long time to get them over there, we kept them in check militarily. And part of what the TPP did was I said I wasn't going to comment on it, here I am. Part of what it did was it kept them in check in other ways that we don't have now. And so whether that means that either A, China grows and becomes a superpower with Russia, and the United States will have to sit back like other countries did in the 80s, or whether or not we're going to have to pick up our military around China. If there's one thing you don't want to do, it's get into a land war in Asia. And that's not just from the Princess Bride, that's true. Or we're going to have to renegotiate something. I mean, would you agree with that? I mean,
Yeah.
just ripping up an agreement like that kept communism in check, if you want to put it that. I mean, if we want to go back to the Red Scare, we can. It's like 1943, do I have that right? I don't know, I wasn't alive. Were you?
No,
I didn't think so.
It is,
I didn't think so.
it is important, once again, this was something Congress would have shut down. The TPP was, after Obama signed it, and its details, so much as we understand them, pretty much dead in the water right now in this current political climate. And thank you. Any other questions that we have? We got a couple, we got several. Go ahead. Ma'am in the purple top, your name, your question.
Okay, Nancy Jester. My question, Russia. It seems like we are constantly getting more evidence of the Trump connection there, and yet are we just getting apathetic and numb to it? Why isn't anything happening? Are we just getting used to it and it's too big to address, so we just aren't going to talk about it?
That would have been such a great question if you were just like, Russia, just stop.
You totally would have gotten it.
Bill, Nora, anybody?
I believe that there are efforts that we are not being made aware of publicly, which goes back to a question we were asked earlier about what's being done domestically that we haven't heard about. There are people in Congress, from what I understand, who are working on the impeachment paperwork or the filing of the charges for the relationship between Russia and the Trump campaign for the purpose of influence in our election. Why are we no longer scared of Russia? I believe as a child of the 80s that 100% it goes back to, we got them. You know, we had them. We got them in check. They're no longer a superpower. We dismembered them. They're fledgling. Their economy, from what I understand, is not doing really well. So we don't perceive them as the threat that we used to. But
So as a
oh, I'm
child,
sorry.
I was gonna say, as a child in the sixties, not in the
Yeah.
eighties, I lived in a house that had a bomb shelter
Right.
in the
Yeah.
basement. And because, and I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis occurring. And, you know, today you guys have active shooter drills. In my day, we had bomb shelter drills, which, you know, if the sirens went off, we got under our desk because apparently school desks had some property that
They
would
protect
protect
you.
you from a nuclear blast.
I went through that too. Don't think I'm that young.
But, you know, but again, I do think things are continuing to move on the Russia
Well, there's
front
some,
in the
just pick
investigation.
one.
What's
Which one
that?
of these, there are too many aspects that he could be impeached on. Just pick one and go for it.
Well,
you
it does,
know?
and see, Jack Goldsmith is an attorney, I follow some of these people that know a lot more about this than I do. And people who have been in other administrations, I don't know if you've been following Nora and Richard Painter, so from two different political parties, but have been very active on the emolument sort of conversation. But Jason Chaffetz's decision not to run for re-election, Jason Chaffetz,
That was just-
he's been read in on everything. He has seen all the classified information.
You could resign.
And his
You might not last
possible
the end of this.
resignation, that's the rumor right now, is that he's not even sticking around in Washington. He is one of the most powerful people in Washington. He's a count on one hand, most powerful people. He's from Utah. But his resignation potentially, and then his determination that he's not running for re-election is a really big signal that there is something there. It does take a long time. The New York Times had a very extensive story about Comey over the weekend. I don't know if you've seen that. These things, if they're properly done, and if this is a country of laws and not men, which it's supposed to be, it can't happen fast.
It will take
because it
years.
has to be done correctly. And I also hope that the state is doing their job, and that we have, and there's some crowdsourcing going on, there's some interesting new findings about the front organizations that donated to the inaugural committees. I mean,
And
it
the
may not
Chavez
be
thing.
something gigantic like that, it might be the littlest tripwire.
But what was it they said about when they got one of the
We
big
don't know.
gangster mobs? It was a mail fraud. It's not sexy, but it has teeth.
That's right.
That's what they'll end up doing.
It'll be
And
something.
The narrative will come out that Chavez, am I saying his name right?
Chaffetz.
Chaffetz. I've been saying it wrong for like years. That, you know, the narrative will come out that it was all his fault, that he quit so that we can blame everything on him, and because he is one of those five, that we can blame everything on him and it's just going to go away. But if the legalities are done correctly, that will not be the case. So him quitting, or I mean, literally running out of DC as quickly as he possibly can is the indication that something's up. The question is what comes next, and we won't know for a while.
And at this point, we've seen a lot of evidence building up in the margins, no smoking guns. There is a real serious investigation going on in the Senate.
Yes.
Hopefully, upon Chaffetz's, dismissal, there will be a more serious one in the House. The FBI is conducting an investigation as well. There might be other investigations. That we
NSA,
don't know
CIA,
about.
they're
Yeah.
all. Sorry,
Great question.
we can't give you a better answer.
Who else had a question? There were a couple other folks.
What do you make of family members coming in?
Oh, like Jared, Yvonne. There was a little
Yeah, like
nepotism.
those-
Oh, you can't even get me, yeah, don't ask me that
We
question.
don't have that kind of.
All right. By the way, it's
It's
not.
bad, it's
Yeah,
bad.
All right.
It's bad? Yeah.
Somebody had a question. Ben, Blue Sheriff Ben.
One thing that became kind of glaringly clear in the 2016 election is like this huge polarizing divide among people on different ends of the political spectrum, like particularly among like young college age people. Like you got like alt-right versus Antifa basically. My question is, how do you guys think the election results and the first 100 days affected this divide? Or do you think like we're more polarized than ever, or do you find like some kind of majority leaning to one side?
I think we are more polarized than ever. Would anybody like to hazard explanation as to what's led us here?
Well, I mean, the numbers, we were watching a poll yesterday, I mean, you know, Trump's folks, he was about 46%, and he still hovered around about 46%